Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel's Launchpad series. Today's episode is Kane, who is a team member with the Rocket Pool team. Kane has been working really hard on the Houston upgrade that is coming this weekend in a matter of days. Kane, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here and speaking about all the great things that you've been working on to get into the Houston upgrade. And I'm really excited to have you here. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Thanks, Wack. I'm excited to be here and happy to talk about the Houston upgrade, which is coming very soon, as you mentioned. I'm Kane Wallman, the Senior Solidity Engineer for Rocket Pool. I've been with Rocket Pool for about 2 years, where I've taken the sort of primary role as the smart contract developer in terms of both sort of design, ideation of updates and upgrades to implementation through to testing and launching it and getting it on mainnet. So as you said, Houston's coming soon. In fact, in about 2 hours from now, the proposal will go live to voting for the ODAO to be able to vote on it. And then the plan is to execute that upgrade on Monday, my time, which is the weekend for most of you guys.
Yeah.
So super excited for that to finally go live. It's been 8 to 9 months in development, actually. It's our longest upgrade yet. And the primary reason behind that is one of the core features of the upgrade is quite a complicated one, which is the on-chain governance system, which we can talk about more deeply as we go.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. When it comes to grade night, how do you feel? Like, are you nervous? Are you excited? Like, what goes through your mind?
Both of those things, and plenty of them both. Yeah, it's very, very nervous, very nerve-wracking. Also very exciting to see this, 8 months of work come to a head and actually get it into people's hands. For this upgrade, the changes are sort of a lot of under the hood compared to some previous ones. So from the user's point of view, it's not a whole lot that changes, but there's a big complicated change under the hood that's happening. A couple of changes actually.
Yeah, so we can start talking about those changes. Of course, the two changes that you're mentioning. One of them is, like you said, I mentioned like moving to on-chain governance, and we can talk about where the ideas for that came from. And the second one is some of the changes that are happening to like the staking functions and withdrawal functions. So I guess those are going to be two of the main things that we're talking about today. But let's start by going back in time. 8, 9 months ago, a year ago, like the Atlas upgrade had happened. What kind of things were you guys thinking at the time, like of what was going to come next? Like what were the discussions you were having?
I mean, we had a lot of ideas of what could come next. So some of the things are like mega pools, which is being pushed back into Saturn, and a lot of changes to kind of make the protocol more efficient for the node operators. These things like staking on behalf and withdrawal addresses. We were talking to people like NodeSet and those guys about how the protocol could sort of progress to better support things to be built on top of them. So some of those ideas were in there. But ultimately, the community, they seem to be have a high priority on the decentralization aspect of the protocol. So to go back even further, when the protocol launched, there are two DAOs with Rocket Pool, the Oracle DAO and the Protocol DAO. On the initial mainnet launch of the protocol, the PDAO was just a placeholder. So you can actually look at the code. It just says a comment there saying this does nothing, like to be implemented sometime in the future. And it was always a plan that would become a proper DAO controlled by on-chain voting. Just wasn't sure when. And in the meantime, the way that's worked is we've sort of developed the rules around the protocol DAO, which is the voting power going to the node operators based on their effective RPL stake. And the way we've handled it so far is the team has this guardian account, and we act as a trusted executor of the protocol DAO's will, so you could say. So there's off-chain snapshot votes to change parameters or whatever needs to be done, and then the team just we just act as a execution middleman. So we just perform the will of the PDAO by
So,
leveraging the guardian powers.
so what kind of parameters can you actually change with the guardian powers?
So there's kind of two lists of parameters in the protocol. There's the ODAO list and the PDAO list. So you can look at the RPIP 33, I believe, has a list of all the parameters which are included, but it's things like enabling and disabling deposits, setting certain rates in the protocol, inflation rates and stuff like that. There's a whole list of parameters that the PDAO
And there's like
can change.
treasury management as well, which is
Yeah, that's the other
current.
side of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
So, sorry, carry on.
that's all right. There's
Yeah.
protocol parameters, and then there's also the PDAO treasury, which is a amount of RPL that comes as a percentage of the inflation, and the PDAO has the power to spend that for whatever reasons it deems necessary.
Yeah. So this, the way that we've talked about it in the community, and like I've talked about in Rocket Fuel, is this is helping Rocket Pool grow to be like maximally decentralized. And this was like one of the areas of FUD that was remaining. Like in the protocol in the past, there was a lot of criticism about the ODAO and how much money they were getting. And once we addressed that with the ODAO charter and their pay cut, then the next step that people jumped upon was the Guardian wallet, and like the team can control everything, they can rug you, blah blah blah, all this like stuff that no one seriously thought was going to happen, but it just kind of became a narrative for people to attack Rocket Pool with. How much of combating that FUD was part of like prioritizing the on-chain voting versus this just being a natural progression of what you all wanted to do?
So both are certainly true. It was always the intention to move away, to give up the guardian powers. In fact, the team at launch had even more powers, and we've given them away as time went on. So the ODAO also had a bootstrap mode where we could unilaterally perform ODAO functions, and we gave that pretty early. PDAO, again, we have the bootstrap functions. We'll be giving that up shortly after Houston as well. And then in terms of prioritizing, we kind of just rely on the community to decide what the direction is. And this, as you said, there was some FUD about it, and focus shifted from the ODAO to the PDAO, and the community kind of decided that that's the direction we wanted to go. So we had to work on a solution for that. And I don't know if you want to get into it right now. We can segue into it, but the reason it took 8 months is because this is a fairly novel voting power governance system. Most DAOs out there just use a simple token balance voting. So you hold X amount of tokens, your voting power is that X. PDAO is designed to minimize the potential for governance capture. So it's not just holding RPL, you actually have to be a node operator. And it's based on how many mini pools you run as the minimum, which is based on the RPL price. So the reason why it's so complicated is because RPL price changes, so does the function, the inputs to the function to calculate the voting power, and due to limitations of the EVM and gas, you can't actually calculate like the sum of all voting power on chain. It's too computationally expensive to do on chain, so we had to develop this optimistic fraud-proof system to do it. And as far as I'm aware, there's no other DAO in the world that has a system this complicated.
No.
I think it's an incredible system because it keeps the voting power with those who are most aligned with the protocol. So governance capture is very difficult for Rocket Pool. You can't just come in with boatloads of cash and buy up the governance and then own the protocol.
And of course, the other thing is as well that the governance power, once you do have RPL staked, is a square root function. So it reduces that impact of, a whale coming in and having 1 million plus RPL. And even then, they only have a small percentage of the vote, even though they've got such a huge percentage of the share. So that, of course, is one of those novel mechanisms as well. But I guess that's not as complicated. So why don't we start with like talking about how the on-chain voting is going to work under the new system? Let me kind of talk a little bit about what the current system is, and if I make any mistakes along the way, you can correct me. But the way the ideas normally work now is people shitpost in trading, and someone has a bright idea and it kind of captures attention. that's one path of it, things happening. Another path is like there's a governance thread where people are talking about different ideas all day long, all the time. And sometimes, an idea or a topic kind of sparks attention in governance, and then people discuss it. And as people discuss it, they think, hey, this is a good idea. We should put this into the protocol. So it goes to the forum where people kind of like present the idea more formally, and they say, hey, this is an idea that we think should go to governance for Rocket Pool and they become part of the protocol. Like, what do you all think? People kind of talk about it back and forth for a few weeks, and then we kind of have like a temp check where people think, is this good? Is this bad? Like, what do you all think? Should we go forward with this? People say, yes, let's go forward with this. So then you write an RPIP that kind of writes up all the information, and that's a Rocket Pool improvement proposal. And currently we're on like RPIP 50, I think, or something like that after the Saturn upgrades. So we've been like chugging along with these over the last few years, which is really cool. So then the RPIP editors make sure that everything looks good. I think Langers, who's on the team, is actually part of that decision process, but I'm not exactly sure. But people like Val and Ramana, and I forget who the third person is from the community, are RPIP editors as well. So once they all agree on what everything's going to look like, Langers or someone on the team kind of figures out what the snapshot voting weight will look like, and then it goes on to vote.rocketpool.net, which is a snapshot front end. Then all that happens off chain, none of it happens on chain. So people vote and they sign a message saying we want to vote this way, and then after 2 weeks or 10 days, whatever the time period is, the vote goes through, and then it goes to you guys, the team, to kind of execute that vote. Is that a good summary of what the governance process looks like right now?
Yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that last step that you mentioned, which is the one that changes. So
Okay.
most of that still remains relevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's still the
Yep.
same process. When it gets to that last step, instead of the team executing a vote,
Yep.
someone raises a proposal on chain, and then the voting happens again, but this time on chain, and then that happens automatically. So even without the teams,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So even if the team wasn't there, those proposals could still go through. And it's important to make a distinction between things like parameter changes and treasury spends and actual protocol upgrades, because contract upgrades are still within the domain of the Oracle DAO. So that same process would happen, and then at the end, it then just has to go through the development, auditing, testing process. Then the team would raise a proposal through the ODAO to actually perform the upgrade.
Excellent.
So yeah, it's really just that last step, which was currently the team had to execute the will based on the snapshot vote. Now that happens on chain.
But that's actually broken up into a few different vote steps as well, right? Like, so there's 2 rounds of voting, and then there's a security council. Can you explain how all those new steps at the end, where they take over and what happens there?
Yeah, so the reason why we have the 2-stage on-chain voting is because we have this delegate system where you can delegate your voting power to another individual, another node operator. So in stage 1 of the process, the delegates get a chance to vote with the combined weight of all of the power that's been delegated to them. And then after that phase, we enter phase 2, where individuals can actually override the vote of their delegate. So you can delegate your vote to someone. They can vote for you. If you're happy with the way they vote, that's it. You don't have to do anything else. Your voting power gets applied to the correct direction of the proposal. But if for whatever reason your delegate has voted for something that you're not happy with, you can actually jump in there and say, no, I don't like that, and then it'll remove the votes that you gave to him from the for and apply it to the against. And then after phase 2 ends, then depending on the outcome of the vote, it can be executed and then applied.
And there's like a deposit that you have to give as well now, right? Like a 1 ETH deposit. Can you tell me a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so this comes into the whole complexity of the whole governance system. So in order to get this to work, we use a optimistic fraud-proof system. So as I said earlier, we can't sum the voting power on chain due to the technical limitations. So the way we handle that instead is that when you make a proposal, you pick a recent block, say 1 block ago, and you do that calculation off chain. And then you generate this, it's a Merkle summation tree, which is just a sort of extension to a Merkle tree, which also includes the sum of a balance. So all the nodes of the tree have a certain value, and then their parents are the sum of those, all the way up to the top one, which is the sum of all the voting power. And that's the value that we want on chain, but we can't get. So we rely on this off-chain process to generate it. And as a proposer, you have to generate this tree and submit that root node, which is the hash of the two children, as well as the sum of the entire tree. So if you do that correctly, then that's it. That's all there is to it. We optimistically accept that's the correct value, and then life goes on. The proposal goes through the voting phases. Well, there's a challenge period, then phase 1, phase 2, and then it's executed. If, however, you incorrectly calculate that tree, so you give yourself 10 times the amount of voting power, then that Merkle root and that balance isn't going to match what other people have. So this is the challenge system. Other people who are opted into being a watcher will watch for new proposals, find the block that those proposals are on, generate that tree the exact same way. It's fully deterministic, so if two people do it, it should come out the exact same way. But if the watcher detects that doesn't match what they said, they can start this multi-round process of proving that that's actually an invalid value. And the way they do that is they kind of walk down the tree saying, okay, well, what was the value for index 10? And then the proposer has to submit that. And then the challenger goes, okay, then what was the one below that? And that keeps going until the end. And when you get to the bottom of the tree, we actually know the value it should be on chain, so we can prove whether it was valid or not. So if it turns out it wasn't valid, then the proposal gets canned, and the proposer, in order to create the proposal in the first place, they had to put up a bond. And that bond is for this exact reason. If they don't do it correctly, then they lose their bond. So that's the purpose of the bond. It's part of that challenge response process of the optimistic fraud proof system.
Right, and then there's the proposal, then there's a challenge period, and then there's the 2 rounds of voting, like we said, and then finally there's a Security Council, right? Like, what's the purpose of the Security Council, and what can they do and not do?
Yeah, so there's always a trade-off with decentralization of being decentralized, but also being able to respond quickly in the case of something going wrong. There's a bug in the protocol. If there's a bug for whatever reason got implemented in the protocol, and we need to quickly disable deposits, well, waiting 4 weeks to go through the PDAL process to disable deposits isn't really good. A lot of damage can be done in that time. Yep. So that's where we came up with this idea of a Security Council. And you can think of the Security Council as kind of like a multi-sig. So the PDAL can choose who's on it. They can choose multiple members to be part of this multi-sig. And the Security Council has a limited set of powers. They can enable and disable features of the protocol. They can't do things like treasury spends or adjusting the inflation. They can disable deposits. They can disable new mini pools, disable vacant migrations, all that sort of stuff. So the idea is that if there's an emergency, the multi-sig users can come together and quickly disable a feature to mitigate damages. And that's pretty much their entire purpose, just to be able to react quickly to emergencies.
Amazing.
And then, of course, the PDAO, if the Security Council disables their malicious and they disable deposits for whatever reason, the PDAO can always come in, disband them, and re-enable deposits. So their powers are very limited.
Excellent. So that actually is a great summation of the on-chain voting stuff. Is there anything that we've missed, do you think, or do you think we've covered all of it there?
I mean, there's a few more little technical things that we don't really need to go over, but there's things like vetoing proposals as well to prevent spam. So you can vote for, you can vote against, and you can vote against with a veto. And basically, if someone comes in and does all these spam proposals, you can veto the proposal, and then not only does that proposal get canned, but the proposal also loses their bond. So things like that. There. And implementation details. If you're really into that sort of thing, you can check out up 33 where it's all listed there.
Yeah. And how was it for you actually working on this on-chain voting, like personally? Like, do you feel like it was a huge challenge, or was it like, technically difficult, or was it just conceptually difficult? Like, where were the difficulties for you in this?
Yeah, both. Conceptually, it was quite difficult. Um, just bringing in all these things. So the delegate side of it was actually quite a difficult thing to um, get working within the system. Um, so I kind of simplified it with the Merkle summation tree description that I gave, but it's actually sort of two trees where the leaf nodes of one tree are actually the sum of your delegated voting power. And yeah, it is quite complicated. I am pretty proud of the outcome. Ultimately, it's a very novel system. The auditors that we had actually did make a comment about that it was one of their favorite things to audit recently because it was so
Nice.
unique. They're used to doing, taking someone's existing code and doing some minor changes and auditing that. But this is an entirely novel system. No other DAO has done something like this. So I think that's
No.
a pretty amazing achievement.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And like you already talked about, why it took so long and stuff. So that of course made a lot of sense. Let's talk about the other side of the Houston upgrade now. So the staking side of it. So you kind of hinted that these were conversations that were ongoing with the community, and also people like NodeSet were involved. So can you tell us a little bit about what the changes are, and then we can discuss some of the downstream effects with these changes that happen.
Yeah, the two changes that you're talking about are stake ETH on behalf of and separating the RPL withdrawal address. Um, they are listed as two separate RPIPs and two separate features,
Mhm.
but yeah, they are linked in that they both sort of help work towards the end goal of separating the sort of capital ownership and the node operation entities. Like they could be separate entities now. Rocket Pool was kind of initially designed with the idea that the node operators would not only be the person running the node, but also the person who supplied the ETH and the RPL. But that isn't so much the case moving forward. There are certain setups, such as software staking as service businesses that need sort of a separation of those entities. And it's I, I do want to point out that it's not perfectly trustless still. Like we're working towards improving that as we go, but there is still sort of a trust assumption between those entities. So the node operator can always get the capital slashed if they perform poorly, for example. So that sort of thing isn't solved in this. But the general idea is that yeah, the person running the node might not be the owner of the ETH or the RPL. So the changes in Houston allow you to apply ETH to a node address, and the node operator can use that ETH to run validators, but they never actually get custody of that ETH. So it never arrives in a wallet where they can transfer it out. It's just in there as a balance that they can use. And then when they exit, the ETH goes back to the owner of the ETH withdrawal address. So that opens up a lot of use cases. So, for example, if a institution wants to stake ETH, but they don't want their sort of DevOps guys having custody of that ETH, they can send that ETH to a node address, and then the person actually performing like the system administration of that validator never actually can't just take that ETH and run away, you know. So it adds that kind of use case. It's also just for regular node operators who aren't using it for that purpose, it adds a bit of a layer of security because node wallets are technically hot wallets. The keys exist on the disk that you've logged into. So if that ever got exposed, then that could be stolen. So by allowing you to fund it from a cold wallet, so you could take a cold wallet, deposit ETH on behalf of your own node, and then that ETH never sits on your hot wallet, and you can just spin up new mini pools from that. So opens up use cases, better security for node operators.
So
It's a nice change.
with the stake ETH on behalf of, let me just see if I understand this right. Will it go straight into like a mini pool queue, or will it just arrive as a balance on the node wallet that can be then used, but you'll still have to do the stake function to get it staking? Okay,
Yeah, exactly. The second one.
yeah. So then that still means that the node operator has some control over what they do with that ETH? Like, so that's where the trust element comes into it to make sure that they'll actually go and stake it.
So they can't access that ETH. It just sits there as
Mhm.
like a
It-
balance on it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, but the part where it's not fully trustless is that currently the supplier of the ETH is they're still expecting the node operator to exit when they want. So
Hmm.
that can be fixed down the line with execution
So,
layer exits. So
yeah.
there's still room to improve, but yeah, just wanted to just put it out there that yeah, it's not a fully trustless system.
Yeah, and then the other side of that, like we were saying, that there's the joint upgrades. That's the RPL withdrawal address. Right now, we have. I feel like we had two different sides. This puzzle, like we had stake RPL on behalf of in the past that would go straight to the node and become staked, and then we also had the ETH withdrawal address, right? So that was the joint address. So we had like these two different parts, and now we're just kind of filling out the picture by adding the opposites. So what kind
Yeah, that's
of
right.
yeah. So, what kind of abilities will the stake RPL, sorry, the RPL withdrawal address have? Like, what will that address be able to do or not do?
Yeah, so I think you pretty much explained it pretty well. We had kind of one here and one there, and now we've kind of
Yeah,
filled in the
yeah,
opposites. So
yeah.
if the entity that owns the RPL is a separate entity from the node operator, the node operator can set the RPL withdrawal address to them, and now RPL can only ever exit the node to that address. So in a similar way that the node operator doesn't have custody of the ETH, they can't just take it and run off. Same can be said for the RPL now. And yeah, that opens up the same sort of use cases as I mentioned, just on the RPL side. So after Houston, you can have the node operator being a separate entity from the person who owns the ETH, who's a separate entity from the person who owns the RPL, and this kind of supports any combination of those setups.
So, will the RPL withdrawal address, will that address be able to claim rewards from the node? So,
Yeah,
can you
that's right.
explain how that works?
In what way? So I think you
Like,
pretty much
what are
said
the
it. It's a,
steps? What are the steps you'd have to do to be able to claim the rewards? Like, do you go through the stake.rocketpool.net front end and do it through there?
yeah, I think this is actually a little bit outside of my area. So
Yeah.
this is like the smart node and the Nix side. But yeah,
Okay.
my understanding is that yeah, there will be a web interface for them to be able to do that.
Okay, yeah. So just like they can use stake.rocketpool.net now to stake RPL on behalf of, then you'd connect to that front end with your wallet and claim your rewards, etc. If it's as they came up, basically.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so why go to all this work to do this when you had like marriages that had taken place in the community where people were bringing their RPL and their ETH separately and even potentially going to a third party node operator through like these splitter contracts or shrimp marriage contracts that some of the community members had. Like why what were the limitations of those? Why do this at the protocol level instead of letting the communities do it themselves?
Well, I think just doing it at the protocol level kind of sets like a baseline uh, of a setup for people, so they don't have to rely on sort of a third party, maybe unaudited splitter contract or something like that. Doing it at the protocol, sort of bring it inside, makes it easier for SaaS companies and other institutions to kind of build on top and do that in like a standard way that's consistent across the protocol. So I should say that I mean these two changes are actually relatively small. So
Mm.
I think it's a um, high value gain for a very small change. In terms of like the 8 months of development, that's primarily the
Those
on-chain
voting.
voting.
Yeah,
Like these changes were relatively simple, so I
yeah.
think it was a easy win for us to bring that in the protocol, make it easier for other people to build on top of us.
So that's actually a nice little segue there. Like, you said that you'd been talking to NodeSet guys during the building process. Like, what kind of input did they have in this? How were they involved?
Yeah, I mean that. I don't want to say that there was any sort of like secret conversations between us or anything. Like all their points are public. They release reports to give everyone the same information as us. So it's not like we had any sort of special insight into what they were doing. But yeah, they kind of told us what their plans were, and they we told them we want to do it kind of this way. Does that work for you? And kind of bounce back and forward ideas. But yeah, it's all public. It's not like we're adding in any sort of special functionality specifically for them. And we got ideas from other parties as well, to make sure that any of these sort of design changes are generic, so it can be built on top of by other protocols as well.
That's wonderful. So, is there anything else you'd like to add about these couple of changes that we might not have mentioned so far?
I think the only other change in Houston is we're swapping to time-based balance and RPL submissions. So again, like all these changes, most node operators probably aren't going to really notice much different, but they are a bunch of quality of life improvements and sort of under the hood fixes to make us more decentralized, more modular, easier to build on top of. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up everything in Houston.
Yeah. So that's the one where we won't have the variable time for the last reward snapshot, like ratio snapshot to be taken. It'll be taken 24 hours before the upgrade every time now.
So yes, that is part of it. We're swapping from block-based signing on when to submit balances in RPL to time-based, and then also rewards are a multiple of the balance update, I think. So yeah, those are the two benefits.
Yeah, excellent. So let's talk about the auditing process now. Like the auditing process started at the end of last year and it carried on into the beginning of, like a couple of months ago, basically. How was the auditing process? What kind of stuff came up in auditing? And you mentioned that, the auditors were quite impressed by your code and the novelty of the ideas. What other stuff came up, especially like any bugs that you want to talk about or anything? Can you share some of that information?
Yeah, so the first audit, I think was late November, early December last year. It was kind of a audit in the middle of still testing and developing, so it was a pretty early on one. So it wasn't too surprising to find that there was a few things they found. So most of the auditors, they spent a lot of the time looking at the governance system, because obviously that's the sort of biggest change and the most complicated thing. So we did chain safe, we did consensus diligence, and we did Sigma Prime multiple times. So yeah, the earlier on ones, we hadn't even really ran the DevNet at that point. So there was a little bit of a disconnect in the development process between when the contracts were ready and when we sort of had the smart node ready to support it. And it was exacerbated by the fact that we were also working on version 2 of the smart node. So there was kind of two code bases being worked on. And yeah, the audit started before we really had the DevNet going, and we tested like the full end-to-end integration of the smart node and the contracts. So a lot of the findings that those early audits did find, we also found when we started, because it was kind of around the same time where we were testing and they were auditing. So a lot of their findings we actually found just through the testing ourselves. So nothing too unexpected. Sigma Prime were great. They were the last ones to audit, and yeah, anytime we sort of found something else in the DevNet and the testnet even, they came back and checked, did a fix check for us. So they were awesome, really flexible with us, really happy with the work that they did, and they provided all sorts of they built their own test suites and stuff and tested some really weird edge cases, and it was really good. Have very high respect for those auditors.
That's so cool. And then Houston, of course, was delayed a couple of times because of a couple of bugs. Can you tell me about those bugs that were found? Like, what were they? And, did they warrant Houston getting delayed for that? Like, can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so one of them definitely did. It came out of the testnet. So once we got onto the testnet and the community started playing with it, there was the most recent one was an issue in the calculation of the overriding vote of your delegate. And yeah, that was that was definitely worthwhile pushing back and fixing that one. That could have caused some issues in production. So um, yeah, and again, it was kind of that mismatch of the timelines. So if we had have been able to sort of test the contracts alongside the smart node integration earlier, then I think we would have been in a better position to catch that ourselves. But just the way the sort of timelines fell, that's how it ended up coming up.
That makes sense. So now we are, a few days away, like 5 days away from the Houston upgrade. Everyone's really excited about this. The community's a buzz about potential whale marriages happening with the protocol. I won't ask you any questions about that, so you don't have to answer anything. Now that the contracts are so close to being deployed, what are you working on? Like, what is your day looking like now that Houston's pretty much done from your side?
Yeah, so there's always some other stuff going on at the same time. So I'm also working on a 4626 wrapper for RETH for an integration partner. But I think what you're really trying to ask me is about Saturn, which is obviously where a lot of the focus is going now.
Yeah.
There's the RPIP up there, which outlines all the tokenomic changes and the introduction of megapools. So yeah, I'm spending a lot of time with the team, sort of digesting that, going through that, and writing comments on that. So yeah, that's as soon as Fusion's done, it's let's do it all again with Saturn.
Yeah, you guys never stop for you just one upgrade to the next upgrade. The next one's always lined up, I guess. So that's
I
really
am
exciting.
I'm a bit glad to get Houston out of the way. It has been, I think it's dragged on a little bit. It did take quite a long time, a lot longer than I initially anticipated
Yeah.
when I first wrote that first bit of code 8 months ago. Didn't expect to
Yeah.
be playing it today, this weekend, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's often the case in software development.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you got to add so much more time to your timelines. Definitely. About the Saturn upgrades, have you delved much into some of the ideas from the community? Like, do you have any thoughts, ideas of your own about what you've seen?
I'm very excited about all the changes, honestly. Very excited about the tokenomics changes. Very excited about mega pools and some of the changes to the queues. I messaged Vel the other day and pointed out that one of the changes that were in one of the RPIPs actually solved a pet peeve of mine, and it wasn't even intentional. It was such a happy coincidence. So
Nice.
yeah, we are delving in quite deep. Megapools, the idea around that has been around for quite a while as well,
Hmm.
with the speak and state proofs.
Yeah.
That's making that possible. One thing that is going to throw a spanner in the mix a little bit there, I think, is the upcoming changes to the
Spectra.
max EB,
Mm.
max balance for the
Effect.
validator.
Yeah.
Effective balance, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we got some comments. Like I won't talk publicly about it now. We'll submit
Mm.
them when they come out. But I think that might have a little bit of an effect on the mega pools and stuff. But overall, Saturn's awesome. Saturn's going to be where Houston was a lot of under the hood stuff. Many people are going to really experience. Saturn's the exact opposite. I mean,
Hmm.
everything's just a massive change to the protocol. It's almost Rocket Pool version 2
Absolutely.
at this
Yeah.
point.
That's the way we're seeing it as well. Is like there's this really exciting bit that's coming up, and it's really cool that the team, you guys are all excited about it as well. Like Langas, when he talks about it, he's really excited, and I think it's going to be wonderful for everyone. Kane, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap this up? What are your thoughts and ideas for things going forward?
Overall, I'm very excited about the direction that the protocol's going. I love the just the sheer amount of effort that the community is putting into these changes. The RPIP for the tokenomic change. If you, I doubt anyone watching this hasn't actually seen it, but you should have a look at that. That's incredibly well done. Unbelievable amount of effort from everyone involved. Really, really excited about that. And yeah, I'm excited to actually take those ideas and make them a reality in the next upgrade.
That's wonderful, Kane. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your patience explaining all the cool things that are coming in Houston and then Saturn later. I'm definitely going to get you on the call in a few months' time to talk about Saturn upgrade once you've got work going on that. Do you have an idea? I'm going to try to sneak some alpha out of you. Do you have any idea about like the timeline maybe for Saturn 1 and Saturn 2, how that might look?
Well, I think the governance and community really want to see us getting that out to compete with another not to be mentioned protocol by like the end of the year is the wishful thinking, I think. So it's really tough to say at this point based on so many things up in the air. But that's we can try and fulfill the wishes of governance based on that.
I,
Whether
I
that
hope
means
so.
pulling some of things out or maybe swapping some things around. Maybe we'll have to see how it goes. It's pretty hard to give you a date this far in advance, and anything
I
I give you would be very wishful thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think end of the year would be amazing. That would be really, really great. But I'm not holding you, or I don't think anyone listening to this will be holding you to that date. So there's nothing to worry about.
I'm
But
sure there are a few people who will be.
yeah, I will be. I'll be bothering you. No, but Kane, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you about the Houston upgrade. Once again, a huge congrats to you and the rest of the team working on
Thank
these
you.
really, really big under the hood changes. I know that, like you said, a lot of people might not even realize that has happened, but there's a bunch of us who do realize like what's happening and just how monumental a shift this is. So truly, like huge shout out and congrats to all of you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
really excited to see the upgrade happen on this weekend, hopefully on Sunday evening, and then working on to the next stuff. Like that's the great thing about Rocket Pool. We're always working on the next thing. So it's really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wack.
Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to you soon.